Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest conversation with Dan Griffiths, technical manager of Tamlite. If you were with us last time on episode 4, you'll know that we were talking about TM66 and looking at the whole issue of circular economy from the manufacturer's point of view. Dan thinks it's worthwhile the effort to stay with TM66 this time round, but actually to delve a little deeper into what the manufacturer's experience is. Now, this is important because the way that TM66 is set up, and Dan will stop me if I'm wrong here, is that there are two routes to a TM66 score which might or might not satisfy the specifier. One is the sort of the lightweight thing, which is basically a designer can look at a product and can come to some kind of conclusion based on information available, but it doesn't go very deep, because how deep can a designer or a specifier or an engineer go? The one that I think we really care about is the one that Danny's going to be talking about, which is where the manufacturer, because the manufacturer is the fount of all knowledge on this one, knows where it's come from, knows where it's been, might even know where it's going. So, Dan, I think this is probably going to turn into a little bit of a lecture, because I don't know that I'm going to have much to say on this unless I go, "Oi, what do you, when you say that? What do you mean?" So, is that okay? We can sort of crack on and say, Dan Griffiths, tell us all about TM66 again.
Again, no problem. That works for me. Hello everyone again. So I think there's two versions of TM66, particularly as you mentioned there, John. So there's the CAF and CM. Obviously, the one that we focus on is the CM, which is the most important bit for a manufacturer, where we can kind of put all our data in. The other one is more, as you mentioned, for a designer, just to kind of see. So that's what when we talked about it on the last episode, that's the one that we've been progressing with. The one we're standing by. We're part of the LIA. We were part of the beta scheme from LIA, and we're currently going through 41 products being tested. I still remember it off the top of my head. To kind of go through the CM system a little bit more, and some of the things that are really involved in it, and some of the changes really that are having manufacturers think about things in a slightly different way, particularly. From time gone by, there's been many other things that have tried to focus on replaceability, I would say, in industry. Zaga, probably one of the most successful ones, really, on a lot of fronts, where, having stuff where it's all in the same form factor, so it can be replaceable, I think if we're all honest in the industry, we got LED, and all of a sudden realised we can make any shape, size, board, whatever we want, and everyone got super excited. Yep. Forgetting that when we had lamps, everything was a little bit easier to replace for the end user, and as an industry we kind of got away from that, as we got excited and making things look much prettier. So that's like a big change for us, I think. So really now, when we go on to a CM form, which is what we fill out as manufacturers, that goes across 4 categories mainly. So that will look at the product design process, particularly on what is involved in that, the manufacturing element of that, then the materials used, and then finally the ecosystem. So that's added a lot of additional levels, particularly into product design and also manufacturing, of kind of reviewing your scores a little bit more and looking at how you're, making a product is more than just putting Zaga boards in now. Which 5 years ago, if you were doing that, you were circular, let's be honest. So there's lots of elements in this now which will kind of cover that. And I can go through all of them in a little bit of detail for people, given the, otherwise this could be like an hour and a half of me going through my
That's what concerns us. Yeah.
So with the product design element, that's really looking at the luminaire. Where's that luminaire suited for? That's kind of the start of it, really. There's certain products that are never going to have a good TM66 score, and that is fine on certain products, and they do try to allow for that in TM66 a little bit. hazardous area, you're not supposed to be able to get in and change any components in that fitting because it's for a hazardous area. So obviously it's explosion proof. And if you've got an IP69 or IP68 exterior product, well, you don't really want that to be accessible for someone to go in and change components because of water ingress. So their scores can be adjusted straight away. But really what this is looking at is trying to make products as flexible as possible in the product design stage, really. So, we'll have certain products, expo fitting, for argument's sake, where we'll have, 10, 15 optics, every type of accessory that has ever existed. That will score higher because you can do a lot more with a product. You're not just putting it into one box, if you like. So that is kind of like the first area of product design that will be reviewed, just to make sure that that's correct and right, really. And then from that, then we start looking at a little bit more of how easy it is to upgrade the products. And I think some of these things are very simple, but things particularly in the industry that we probably didn't consider enough. Like a great one is, are your drivers on plug and socket terminals, or are they wired to terminal blocks? And you go, well, everyone goes, well, terminal blocks, obviously. And one goes, well, that's not easy maintenance. And you go, oh yeah, I never thought about that before, actually. Yeah, I could easily just put that onto a plug and socket arrangement, keep it safe so that it could be easily removed. You see it in fire rated downlights all the time. So you do sit there sometimes and go, these things could be made easier. And that's what some of these things are, how easy it is to upgrade the light sources. All your, what I would call your Zarga, but really bits go into that as well. But also that ease of installation a little bit is key, and how easy it is to find the information. So, a big one there is QR codes on the side of products. Is it visible? That's what we talked about in the last episode as, low-hanging fruit. That's the easiest fix. And it's something a lot of manufacturers don't do, but can sit there and go, well, that's easy. And then you're instantly making a product more circular because anyone can find what that product is in 5-10 years' time, hopefully. So that's a big thing with the product design element of a CM that we focus on. So it's really going through the replaceability, how user-friendly is the quality of it somewhat, so the body life, making sure we're using the right materials that are going to last, 20 plus years, hopefully. And, I think for a lot in the industry that have been around that long, we see our own fittings from 25, 30 years ago coming back in for remanufacture. So people should be looking at, driver lifetime. What's the best driver lifetime we can put in that product? So if someone wants to change the LEDs or something, the driver's still got life to go. Light source is obviously a part of that as well. Even down to like optical resilience. Over the years, everyone saw an LED panel that's gone brown in the center, and they realized that the life guide's not UV stabilized. Normally, if you go into certain fast food wholesalers that sell sausage rolls, you see a lot of them. Heat as well doesn't help that. But that's like a big element of it then as well, making sure that the optics, because it's all great having an LED that works and a driver that works a long time, but if your optic fails and it discolors after 20,000 hours, well, it can only be replaced. There's a golf analogy for that. There's no point making circular golf clubs that are all from recycled material, then you get a plastic tee out and use that and snap it in your first go. Same type of thing with optics.
Gotcha, yeah.
So we'll kind of go through that, and then they just check a little bit on photometry, making sure that your photometry is done properly. It's not a self-service. You've got all your photometry available. It's certified, and you can just get a little extra score. So that is kind of just the product design side of CM a little bit more. So you can see there's some certain nuances that people didn't really think about as an industry. We're trying to think more about the installer and more about the replaceability and who could it be replaced by, particularly, At the moment, everything is replaced by a professional electrician.
Dan, can I just sort of, you mentioned photometry there.
Yes.
And we know it's not a big part of it, but one place where photometry is a big part is the latest Part L requirements, and the way that sort of lumen efficiency is now so much higher, embarrassingly high in some instances. Is there any correlation between energy efficiency and TM66?
Not greatly, if I'm honest with you. That would make a lot of sense, John. It's not. Um, it would be something that I don't want to say overlooked, but might be remiss a little bit aware. Because this is looking at the replaceability, and I think what they focus on a little bit more is that the future upgrades wouldn't be detrimental to the efficacy or the lifetime of the product in TM66. So
Oh,
they're naturally going to assume that it's going to be more efficient, but they want to make sure that, if they put new LED boards in, that it's not going to be, the thermals and the heat's not going to build up, so your efficacy gets worse. They've looked
oh,
at it
gotcha.
that way a
Yeah.
lot more. Efficiency would be one that would make sense of where your efficiency is, but it's not in the document. Um, I think it's an important aspect. I think, and I do understand the logic somewhat, John, of it, because there is a lot in the industry of people talking about being circular and being, you know, more environmentally friendly just by having an energy efficient product. And nothing is recyclable, replaceable.
Right.
I see it
Okay.
daily on LinkedIn. So I can understand why they might have distanced themselves slightly from that. So people aren't trying to use that as I don't want to say a scapegoat somewhat, but you can get we joked about UFO high bay before. You can get a 200 lumens per watt UFO high bay, but there's nothing circular about that product potentially. So
Mm.
I think they've
Yeah.
tried to find that balance a little bit.
Yeah. I guess my concern was that we know that as soon as you ramp up luminous efficacy, you will find products out there that are just being driven harder. They're
Yes,
driven harder, and so the equipment, the components fail quicker, and that
true.
is right into TM66.
Yeah,
So you
and I
think
think what.
that almost just a limiting factor on how efficient
Mhm.
we want you to be, because otherwise there might be a knock on that is working against us.
It's a great point,
Sorry,
John, because you do have.
I don't knock you off your spiel here, because otherwise we can talk about this all day. But it just
Yeah. So what I would close with, I think that's a great point, and I think that's where, as the document develops, and there's future amendments to it, that might be something looked up, because they do publish a driver lifetime, and I do supply driver lifetime data, but I don't actually have to provide thermal data to show that that lifetime is what I would achieve.
okay.
So you are spot on that point, really. That kind of should be there. Um, so then on CM, the other one, obviously manufacturing. That's a big part of it as well. So that's really looking at the supply chain a little bit. How much of this is made in house, how much is made out of house. What's the geographical distance between the supply chain and the final assembled product. Is it all made in the Far East, for argument's sake? That's where it's made. That's the final assembly, or that's where it goes. And then also from a remanufacturing point of view, if you haven't got a facility to remanufacture a product, then okay, where does that come from? And that's just done on a point scoring system on miles. So they kind of go through that a little bit on the manufacturing side, and then they kind of go more into particularly like the sourcing element and the manufacturing element of so you'll have the manufacturing side, and this is a bit that sometimes is difficult, and where we can, you'll have little bits of like, where can you add in 3D printing, and we've been lucky where we can add in scores for that on some of our road lanterns, where we make 3D printed light blockers, which is a lot more efficient than the big horrible metal ones, and it doesn't look as ugly. But the challenge is sometimes they talk about subtractive manufacturing. What products have you removed since 2020? And it might only be 2 years old. So the answer is always nothing. So you don't get scores for that, obviously, which, again, if we're talking about trying to be circular, I suppose in an ideal world, you wouldn't be making new products. You'd just be remanufacturing and redeveloping the current products you got, but life's not perfect. People always want new stuff too. And then it will just go into a little bit of, is the company looking at corporate social responsibility? What are they doing on that? Have they had an audit? What do the employees get a little bit? Where do you make the product? So the manufacturing will focus a little bit on those elements. It's not a really in-depth topic. If you compare that to a TM65, obviously there's a lot more detail that go into that. And then really when you come down to the materials, that's then looking at the proportion of your materials that are recycled, recyclable, what's not from virgin material particularly, and then a little bit on biodegradable materials, which we touched on last time, which is definitely my bugbear. Because in lighting, really, you can sit there and go, well, I don't plan on using cotton or wool in any light fitting. So it doesn't really help us as an industry greatly. Obviously, there's certain things we could look at where it suits, but not massive. And then, just where we can use innovative materials and packaging, which is an important one. How much of your packaging is recyclable? How much improvements have you made on your packaging?
Sure.
Just your basics. There's no great talking about a product and you put it in a plastic bag and off you go. So that's the other element to it. And then the final part of it is the ecosystem. So that's really then looking at how you manage that. So that's like how you will recycle. And there's some great points in this, John. I'll be honest, personally, as a business, as a company, that we might not have thought about. Reusable packaging. Do you retrieve your packaging? And you go, all right, we retrieve pallets on big projects. You go, I've never retrieved packaging. Okay, well, that's something new to think about. Is that something we should start considering? And then it will just look at like how you can refurbish products. Do you have people who can refurbish it? Is there, an upgrade team that can assist with that? How do you plan to recover your fittings? And how do you plan to dispose of them ethically if you have to dispose of them? And then what your warranty length is. I don't know what that needs to have a little bit more in it, I think, but I'm only taking from points. We have a 7-year warranty, and my options are 5 or 10. So I'm like, well, I'm not quite 10, but I'm more than 5. I want more points. Give me a half point. So we'll have that into there, and it talks about, which is a good point, transferable warranties as well. So which most sites should have. If you've dealt through a contractor, who holds the warranty? Is it the contractor or the end user on site? Which is all important things that people probably take for granted a lot of the time. Probably don't have that discussion daily. For most of us, if you've done big box retail and you've done that through a contractor, well, big box retail can contact you, or if you've done an office or whatever you've got, normally that warranty is transferable. It's different if they move site and they've took it all with them, then that might be a conversation point, but that is one of the other elements that they kind of will run through a little bit to discuss then as well.
It
so
sounds
that
like
kind of then encompasses it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that sounds like the ecosystem side of it sounds like it's almost sort of yellow brick road territory. That we are where we are, but it would be really nice to be a little bit further down the road, and things that we haven't even thought about. As you say, the reclaimable, reusable packaging. It's great in concept, and it'd be wonderful to find out how in practice we make that work. And but I could see massive changes in the way that things are packaged up, transported, delivered to site. It's almost as if everything goes in a container, and the container is the packaging, and then you pick up your container and bring it back afterwards. And I don't think anybody's thinking too much about that.
But I think it's something completely different for the industry, where you sit there and go, yeah, we could, and I think doing these things, outside the industry, it makes you look at everything. I said I joke about it with golf. I actually thought I was playing golf yesterday. I thought about it with plastic tees. I have plastic tees, and I'm like, single-use plastic, that's probably not that great, actually. Could they not make them out of silicone or something else where, and it just changes people's mindset. And it is bringing up opportunities and thought processes that people have never had before, like packaging. Packaging was, 5 years ago, everything was colour cartons. It had to be colour cartons. No one wanted plain boxes. If you had plain boxes, who are you? Now everyone, it was cheap if you had plain boxes. So now everyone is kind of back to, well, why couldn't I reuse the boxes? Why don't we have something in place where we can go collect those boxes? If we collect pallets, There's a point in COVID where and supply chains where no one could get pallets, so you wanted to collect your pallets. But that shouldn't be the catalyst to change. It should be the catalyst to change. You're using the same things to make sure they're used right.
Yeah.
And
And also
that is
everybody
well.
understanding the process, understanding the philosophy. There was a guy who I knew who was doing early sort of remanufacturing, but he was sort of changing from T8s and T12s to T5s. He didn't really like LEDs very much, but when he delivered his the fittings back to site, everybody said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm taking the fittings out of the box." Yeah, but we've bought these things. Yeah, well, you've only bought the fitting. You haven't bought the box. So I'm going to take the boxes away. And he just leave the fittings lying all over the floor. Yeah, fantastic idea. Not quite worked out as well as it should have done, maybe, but that's because he was the only one even thinking about it at the time.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we've had deliveries before where we've not boxed them. Normally, that was because it was quicker for a contract and not because it was circular,
Yeah.
So contractors have been right on this. They just haven't realised for the right reason sometimes. But you do sit there and you go, oh yeah, well that makes sense actually. We could do more with that. And I think a lot of that form, and it might be something we touch on in a future topic, of product design for circular economy a little bit more. I can get Eduardo in on that one a little bit more as well. It is making us look at these things so much more of, how easy is that to replace? How easy is that? What material are we using? Okay, well, if we tool it differently, what do we get for that? It's a reintroduction to older technologies which were more sustainable sometimes.
I'm
really looking at manufacturing.
Let's finish off on this one then, because we've done our time again. When we look at TM66 and we look at the process, and there's a lot of if you like, good thinking around TM66 as why we should be doing these things, and we've got a planet to look after. But in practice, in hard-nosed commercial practice, is TM66 a way of doing things better, and I mean better commercially, than we have been in the past? Because one of the arguments against all of this stuff is that it's always going to put the prices up. And I wonder if that's the case.
Yes, it will slightly. On UK manufactured stuff, probably not massively. If it's imported products from the Far East, yes. But it's how it should be anyway. It's how it used to be. A bit like other industries, having to look at that. I think there is a massive commercial benefit to it. I think the most important thing that needs to happen with it is mandatory certification.
Yeah.
It is third-party accredited, because it's too easy otherwise to just be another tick box, and people will get annoyed that we've scored X and you'll see something else that scored 2.8 or it's a claim 2.8, and you go, well, so it needs to be certified, it needs to be done properly, and then I think it has a big commercial benefit as people are thinking about these things more and more. And even if you're a Far East manufacturer, like we said last time, you can still make things more circular. You just don't have your driver potted, have your driver so it can be replaced.
Sure.
Instantly set more circular. It might be a small change, but you can still make changes.
Lovely. Dan, thank you very much as ever for your time, and many, many words of wisdom in all of that. And clearly there is something here for us all to get behind, and it's just the start of the journey. TM66 is still, I think, only a couple of years old, isn't it, Dan? I think. When did you start talking about it?
2 years ago. Beta, 8-9 months ago.
Yeah. It's post-COVID, isn't it? I mean, that seems to be the best.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the journey is on. So pack your rucksack and off you go, and let's see where it takes us. Dan Griffiths, as ever, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll see you again with the next topic, whatever that might be. Thank you and goodbye.